Wow. Humans. I'm so used to seeing Zoom, it's kind of the weird being in a room, from Zoom to a room. There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? Good, isn't it?
Trying to remember the etiquette.
I was at the England match, which is a bit of a shame. Having said that, I couldn't believe being in a stadium with 60,000 people after a year and a half. It was something else. And in fact, I blogged today about another weird experience, because I drove up to see my mum this week. Haven't seen her for a year and a half. And she lives in the Midlands, near Loughborough. And as I drove up the M1, I was really taken by how many warehouses there were by the side of the motorway. And then I have a house in Kent. I walked down the high street and discovered all the shops had shut and all the restaurants were closed. And you may say that's the pandemic, Chris. I say that's digital transformation. The high street's being replaced by the warehouse. And we're in this world right now where everything is going digital. And you suddenly realize that as long as you can connect digitally to the network, you can get everything at home. I mean, I've been living in Poland for a year and a half, and I've had everything delivered from Amazon UK. Not an advert. Just saying. If it wasn't there, I couldn't have survived the last year and a half. Because I've got two little boys who were 4 and then they're now 5 years old, twins. How do you entertain kids if there's no network? If you can't order things? In banking, this, for me, raises a big question. And the big question is, what are banks for? What are banks for? Trust. It's all about trust. Money is the most important thing in our lives, apart from the obvious. The second most important thing in our lives. Money is important. And because banks provide trust that they won't lose our money, that's what's important. Banks won't lose our money. Why do we believe banks won't lose our money? Because the government says so. Because the government issues licenses and regulates them. Because the government says you can trust these guys. So why would you trust someone who's not regulated? Why would you trust Bitcoin? It's not regulated. But it is. It's regulated by the network. It's regulated by the people. It's democratized, distributed, decentralized. It's regulated by me and you. Who do you trust, me and you, or the government? Big questions about how we move from the high street to the warehouse to the home. How we move from the trust in government to the trust in the people. And where that's leading us and what that does in the next decade. The next decade is going to be really interesting, and it's a theme that I'm exploring a lot at the moment, because the next decade is actually going to be about the people. It's about the trust. It's about the governance. It's about what we want the future to be. And I want the future to be one where my children and grandchildren have a future. We're all worried about the climate emergency, but what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Are you doing anything? Because I couldn't believe that there's a number of statistics. One is that 71% of the greenhouse gas emissions that have been killing our planet for the last 30 years are produced by just 71 companies. Another is that in the last 6 years since the Paris Climate Accord, the biggest banks of the world, the 100 biggest banks, have produced trillions of dollars of investment in fossil fuel companies. Now, you can't turn that off overnight, and you may say, why are you banging on about this, Chris? You're supposed to talk about digital transformation. But digital transformation will create human transformation. Because digital is a way in which we can use technology for good, for the planet and for society. And I'm seeing it happening. You know, digital transparency means that anybody who's doing bad for the planet and society will get discovered and found out and caught out. And there's a few big banks in Britain and around the world that have been doing a lot of greenwashing, claiming that they're doing good for society and for the planet, and they're not. On the other hand, I live in Poland. I have self-isolated, so I'm okay, don't worry. Wear a mask. But, you know, Poland is a country that depends on fossil fuel. It's the most polluted country of Europe. I didn't know that till I moved there. Kate, you can tell me if I'm wrong, Ukraine? No. But, you know, you can't switch off fossil fuel overnight. But what I'm really driving towards is that the mantra for the next decade will be using digital transparency to name and shame companies that are doing bad for society and for the planet. And I'm not saying that as a baby boomer, well, double millennial, triple Gen Z. I'm saying it because kids are saying it. Society is saying it. We've moved from the age-old world of government controlling the views of the people to the people controlling the views of government. That's what the network does. That's the big change in my lifetime. The government doesn't control the buttons. We control the buttons. We control the clicks. We control the thinking. And that is massive change, not just in retail and commerce and manufacturing and technology, but in society and in finance and government and banking. And so when I bring that back to banking, I think the biggest issue in banking today is that banking is run by bankers. It needs to be run by people who understand the change in our world to be truly digital, to have a digital foundation. The people who understand that are fintech companies. That's the reason why they're getting so much investment. I don't know if you saw it this morning. In the last 6 months, UK fintech, just UK fintech, got $5.2 billion of investment. In the last 6 months. To me, that's phenomenal. Okay, JP Morgan Chase spends $11 billion on technology in a year, whatever. But, you know, $5.2 billion in UK fintech in 6 months. Not only is that important because of the number, but it's important because of UK fintech. London fintech. You know, this is the place. Even though I live in Poland, I live there because I've got a Polish wife. This is the place. This is where we have the most innovation. And do you know why that is? It's because people like Ron and the government and, you know, the Treasury and the regulator, the FCA, Mr. Bailey, Bank of England, along with all of the people in technology and finance, are here. Next door to each other. In one day, you can meet with all of the people who are regulating, organizing, governing, creating, innovating visions of technology and finance in one place, and it's London. And that's why I'm delighted to be chairing London Fintech Week, because we're going to change the world. Thank you.